Thank you all for being here.
Not on the
It's
agenda.
not on the agenda, thank you. We are, what you wanted to do, sorry. Okay. So we're doing the appointments first before, sorry. We have a new item on the agenda tonight, so I'm a little out of sorts here. All right, so we are reconvening to open session, and we actually are going to start this evening with a very special recognition for our student board members. We are going to appoint them to their offices this evening. So I'm going to ask you to stand, I guess. Should we stand? Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to make it official. Stand, raise your right hand. And you have a copy of what you're going to be reading in front of you, but I'll also pause. So raise your right hand and say, I, and each of you state your name, do solemnly swear. You can read it together. Yeah. That I will, I'll read, okay. Well, I'll read it, and then, so I'll read a few words, you'll repeat, I'll read a few words, you'll repeat. Well, thanks. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Congratulations and welcome to the board. Why don't we bring the principals up right now to introduce each of the students. To a microphone, yeah. Sorry, I'm used to being not, yeah.
Okay, well, it is my pleasure to introduce Dylan Pena Perez to not only the board, but also our community. He is 17 years old. He's a senior at West County High School. Dylan is very engaged in both school and the community. At El Molino, Dylan was the La Raza president, and now he is co-president of La Raza Unida, which is a combination of La Raza from El Molino and La Mecha from Annalee High School. He has an internship right now with the Latino Service Providers, which focuses on accessing community health services and destigmatizing mental health resources in the Latinx community. So there's a lot of community outreach there. He did have to take a class over the summer in San Francisco in order to prepare for this position that he is in right now. Dylan is a very driven student. I did check in with his teachers behind his back, so these are all the things that his teachers have said about him. His teachers describe him as mature, intelligent, dedicated, dependable, attentive, and kind. One teacher noted that Dylan always starts the class with a hello when he comes in and a thank you when he leaves. They say he goes above and beyond all of the expectations on his assignments, and in Dylan's free time, of which he has very, very little, he is a 3-sport athlete, cross country, basketball, and track. When he really has nothing to do or nothing pressing in front of him, he does enjoy drawing. And he said that he used to play some video games, but unsurprisingly, he just does not have a place to sit down and actually do that sort of thing anymore. So he's a really busy guy. His future goal is to work in the aerospace engineering field and possibly After his education, landing a job at SpaceX, NASA, or Virgin Galactic, and I believe that all of that is possible for Dylan. And I am absolutely looking forward to working with him this year. And this is Dylan.
Great, Allie?
Thank you. I'm here to introduce Peyton Hamner. So, Peyton, we are so proud that you agreed to represent us. Peyton wants to be a social worker when she grows up, and she wants to help the world, and this is her first step to do that. What impresses me most about Peyton is her quiet persistence. She's not the loudest voice in the room, but when she speaks, the entire class stops and listens. She has presence. She has this magical quality about her that makes everyone stop and pay attention. She's also an outstanding softball player. We've had to kind of expand our break times because she and her friends go out to the fields and practice softball during breaks. And we love that. We love that she's out there engaging with her small community and doing something that she loves. We are so proud that you are representing us, and we're so excited to see all the things you're going to do.
Great, thank you, and welcome again to the board. So now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag, United States.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'd like to pull an item or move an item, if I may. Can we move item A1, the trustee voting areas, to right after we approve the agenda? Because Mr. Salt is currently here, and we would like to let him do that, and then we will move on with the agenda so we don't spend any more of his time. And with that,
A couple items you want to pull also, Tony. What were those
Correct.
items?
So we need to pull items A6 and A7, and those will come back at our next board meeting.
Okay.
so I would like to then make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
And a second?
Second.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and a student vote? Thank you. All right, so we will start with item A1, public hearing regarding the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of draft trustee voting area plans by the district's demographer.
Jonathan, that's my computer. We have actually it running in the back of the house, so you'll just ask them to advance the slide.
Okay, so on February 10th, 2021, the district initiated the process of transitioning the method by which the governing board is elected. So this is the first in a series of public hearings and discussions on this item. I think you have what you say here.
It's okay, I can stand, it's fine.
So the governing board will convene a public hearing to receive public testimony concerning the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of the draft voting area plans by the district's demographer. I keep going. Is that all I need to say?
I can present and then you can open the public hearing.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet the board, district staff, and the community. I'm Jonathan Salt with F3, and I'll be helping the district with its election transition. Tonight is a big step in this process. A few months ago, you may remember, the board took action to initiate the transition from at-large to by-trustee area elections. And now that the census data is about to be fully released and approved by the state, it's time to continue. So each meeting we're going to present, usually myself and a demographer. The demographer couldn't make it with the board meeting date change, but no problem. We're going to give an overview of what this is each time in case there are new folks watching or new folks in the audience. But what is this all about? So the California Voting Rights Act, or the CVRA, took effect about 18 years ago. So my new favorite joke is it is now old enough to vote. And it prohibits the use of at-large elections if that system impairs the ability of members of protected classes from influencing the outcome of an election or from electing candidates of their choice. And so under the law, unlike the Federal Voting Rights Act, there's no intent requirement, meaning the district or a city or a county doesn't have to intend to violate the CVRA or to prohibit a protected class from influencing the election in order to be found in violation. So it's very easy for a prospective plaintiff to file claim against a government entity. Another reason this is popping up here in this part of the state and around the state is that a prevailing plaintiff is entitled to recover attorney's fees or expert fees, but if a school district or a city were to successfully defend its at-large system, it's not afforded that same right. So what is a by-trustee area election system? Well, first, and probably most importantly, it's the only safe harbor from a CVRA claim. So by the district transitioning to this system, it's safe from CVRA litigation. But really, the way it works is since you have 5 trustees, the district will be divided into 5 roughly equal population areas, and 1 trustee will be elected from each area only by the folks who live in that area. Now, importantly, all of you have been lawfully elected, so regardless of where you live, you serve out the remainder of your full term, regardless of how the maps end up looking. So this is sort of step 2. Step 1 was a few months ago. So this is, the law does not allow the demographer to draw any maps until there have been 2 what I call pre-map public hearings. Pre is in before, so before any maps can be drawn. This is a chance for the community and the board to share their thoughts about what lines make sense, what neighborhoods make sense to keep together, to split up. You all know your community better than we do, and so this is the opportunity to tell us, before the demographer draws the maps, what makes sense here. A little bit about your district. I know there's a lot more on the screen. First, this is the 2010 census data. Again, the 2020 census has not been fully approved by the state yet. It will be done by the end of the month. That's the data that is needed to draw the maps. Don't worry, the actual maps will be drawn with the 2020 census data. This is just for explanation. So in 2010, the district had about 47,000 people living in the district. So for 5 trustee areas, you're talking about 9,500 people per area. And importantly, that's total people, regardless of age, regardless of citizenship status, regardless of if students attend school or not. It's anyone at the census from age day 1 to 150, any person, just like the way they do congressional lines. And so as you can tell, district-wide, it's about almost 13% Hispanic Latino, 77% Caucasian, and then a few other protected classes sprinkled in, but mainly the kind of the largest protected class is the Hispanic Latino population, at least as of 2010. Another factor and kind of data point that the demographer is going to use is called citizen voting age population, or CVAP data. So essentially, this is likely voters. So someone who is a citizen and of voting age. It's not necessarily registered voters, but this data comes out every few years. So as you could tell, this is from 2015 to 2019. And it looks at estimates of citizen voting age population. So this map shows where the higher or lower concentrations, here in particular of the Hispanic population based on CVAP is. And then what we'll look to do, in addition to other factors, is how can we draw lines that could, in theory, increase the ability of protected classes to have a greater influence over the outcome of elections. So district-wide, 7.3% Hispanic Latino. Maybe when the maps are drawn, that number gets up in one area to 20%. It's just an increase, does increase the ability of protected classes to influence the outcome of an election. It's not the major factor in drawing them, but it's something that the demographer will look at. So really the point of tonight's hearing is to hear from you in advance about where should lines be drawn, what makes sense. And so, for example, I think neighborhood X and neighborhood Y should be in the same area. Or, and again, I just made these up. I think Bodega Highway makes sense because it seems, to make sense geographically. Or I think all of blank community should be in one area, or each trustee should serve multiple school site attendance areas, or try to keep elementary attendance areas intact or split. All of this is based on preference, but it's just the kind of thing that we want to hear from the board and the community tonight. When the demographer draws the maps after these 2 pre-map public hearings, the number 1 criteria is equal population. So again, based on the 2010 census, 9,500 people per area. That will change when the 2020 is fully released, but that is really not movable. Other factors, again, equal population, they have to be contiguous, so you can't start drawing a trustee area on one corner of the district, then stop and then draw a different one somewhere else and say those are both area 2. You can't do that. They got to be continuous. They should be compact to the extent that's possible. So you don't want to have kind of fingers around the map, which, you know, the terrible G word, gerrymandering, that's not what this is about. It should really make sense when you look at it. Communities of interest, that's what we're talking about tonight. What areas make sense to keep together or to split up or serve as boundary lines. And the maps cannot favor or discriminate against an incumbent. What that really means is that the demographer can look at where the current board members live, but a line drawing decision cannot be made based on that. Final thoughts, this doesn't change the district's overall boundaries. It doesn't change school attendance. This really doesn't even change how the board is governed. All that changes is who can run for board and when and who elects them. Each board member owes a duty to the entire district regardless of how they are elected. Still one district with common goals and challenges. So coming up, about a month from now, there'll be a second pre-map public hearing, and then in probably mid to late October, the demographer will draw, I would say 3 or 4 draft map options, probably map 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll get posted on the website, pushed out at school, et cetera, so that folks can comment on what they like or don't like about each map. And then there'll be 3 public hearings thereafter, where again, we'll have the same presentation plus a presentation about each map and the data that goes along with it. Field comments from the board and the public about which ones you like and which ones you don't and why. And on December 15th, after that last public hearing, the board will then vote on one of the map options to serve as the district's trustee area map plan. And thereafter, the county will then have to approve of that as well. So with that, I will stand back and let the public hearing continue, and I'm going to stand by to answer any questions. Thanks.
Do we have any clarifying questions from board members? Student reps, do you have any clarifying questions? I do have one question just around the process that the demographer uses. So the whole intent around this is an equity piece that we're trying to have more protected classes become members of our board. So I'm just wondering how we can ensure, given that we're not a community, say like Santa Rosa, where we have a high percentage of protected classes living together in certain concentrated areas, how we can ensure through this process that, no offense to my fellow adult board members here, that we don't just continue to have an all-white board, because I know that our district is investing a decent amount of money into this process. And I just want to understand how the demographer will go about that process, given that in our community, we just don't have the high concentrations that you might see in another community that would lend it a little bit easier to create a district where you're more guaranteed to have a protected class be able to become elected.
Well, that's a great question. And I just want to clarify that the point of the CVRA is not necessarily to change or have certain folks of a particular ethnicity become elected, but rather it's allowing folks in the community who are of a protected class to have a greater influence on the outcome of the election, regardless of the candidate of their choice. Candidate of their choice could be anybody. But one of the things I know that the original letter that was sent home, I believe, in English and Spanish, and I believe it will continue to kind of push out on both social media and other ways in multiple languages. But really looking at the map, the demographer is just going to, when the data is out, you can't break the equal population requirement, but to the extent that there are communities of interest or really concentrations, to the extent that they exist here, the demographer will try not to split those up, so that it can increase the voting power of those groups in that area or two. That said, you can't make somebody run for board, right? But there are still ways to get that out there and explain what it is to run for board, especially if there ends up being a trustee area drawn where there's no trustee that lives in it. When it comes time for that trustee area to come up for election, certainly recommend making sure it gets out to that community what it is to be a board member, what the time commitment is, and how it works, and how to go about running. So there are ways to kind of do that when we get there, but that doesn't happen yet. I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, thank you. Any speaker cards on this item? Okay. We will now convene a public hearing just to receive public testimony concerning the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of the draft trustee voting area plans by the district's demographer. Under California Elections Code, Section 10010, the board must hold at least 2 public hearings over a period of no more than 30 days, at which the public is invited to provide input regarding the composition of the districts before drawing draft maps of the proposed boundaries. As part of this public hearing, members of the public may submit comments on the established voting area boundaries for new trustee voting areas that will be established as part of the district's transition from an at-large election system to a by-trustee area election system. So if you haven't put in a speaker card and you would like to speak on this item, I think we have one. Now is the time to do that, and we will ask you to come up and make comments on this matter and this matter only. We received 1 speaker card for this item, so I'm just gonna call and thank you, and we'll listen to that one. Do we have any additional speaker cards down there? Okay, Tony will read the 1 comment. I don't think it's an in-person speaker, and we'll give 2 minutes. It looks like it's a short one.
Yeah.
You'll be able to get it. Yeah, 2 minutes.
I don't think I can do both my glasses and my mask. So this comment is made by Debbie Ramirez. As I will be unable to attend the board meeting in person this evening, I am submitting this public comment for this evening's hearing via email as requested. Ideally, I would have liked to have been able to comment after Mr. Salt's presentation, as some of these items may have been addressed at that time. First, the maps included in the PowerPoint presentation attached to the agenda did not reflect the entire district. I'm not sure if this was an oversight. If it is, that should be corrected. Second, I think that it would be useful to take the elementary feeder district boundaries into consideration while drawing up proposed trustee areas. There are 10 elementary districts, so I'm not advocating for 1 trustee per elementary district, just an awareness of these boundaries. Since these districts already exist and they currently reflect our communities socially and geographically, it makes sense to incorporate them to the extent possible in the design of trustee areas for the high school district. Finally, I would like to suggest that the October 13th public hearing on this matter be publicized more widely, perhaps with information provided to the local press. I'm not sure if very many people were aware of this hearing tonight. If there is little feedback tonight, I hope that the district will consider adding another pre-map public hearing in order to gather as much feedback from the public as possible. Thank you.
And seeing no other comment.
I think there might be one more coming.
Okay, Carmen, is that Carmen? Okay.
I just had a question. Sorry, I was filling out the form so I could ask the question. What happens if we draw the lines and vote and approve it and nobody puts in the district? And I guess maybe a follow-up would be to encourage those that live in the further parts of the county to run, if there would be a plan to allow a remote attendance, because I could see that would be an issue if you have to drive in every time.
What happens if there's no one, then is it like in normal, the board would appoint?
So a couple of things. Those were actually both great comments, including the written comment. The elementary feeder district is a great idea that I'll share with the demographer. I'll also say that folks tend to pay more attention once the maps are drawn, and the maps are fluid when they are drawn. So we could come to the first map public hearing and everyone could say, I really hate all these, or I like 2, but I really wish you could move this line over, and then you could make 2A. So, it's not done once the maps are created. In terms of what happens if the final map is done and there's an open area and nobody runs, there's a vacancy just like any other board vacancy. However, the board must appoint someone who lives in that trustee area. Now, granted, each trustee area would have about the same number of people in them, which is helpful, but that's the way that would work. It would be an appointment or potentially a special election, but just for that area.
Okay, thank you. I think that closes our public hearing then, and we will, public hearing, receiving testimony concerning the composition of potential trustee voting areas is now closed, and we will have the additional opportunities for input that were outlined in the presentation. So thank you. And now we'll move on to input from the public regarding items not on the open session agenda. So I have a speaker tonight, Sheila Moles.
Are you guys doing 2 or 3 minutes?
2?
The minutes say, or the agenda says 3. Your
Yeah,
agenda
we have
says 3.
5, and then there's 6 already. Oh, I haven't read do people know? I feel like people, okay. Members of the public who wish to be heard by the board are asked to complete a speaker card. I hope everyone recognizes they're down here in the front, so if you want to speak on an item tonight on the agenda, they are down in the front. Once recognized by the board president, speakers should come to the podium, introduce themselves for the record before addressing the board. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Groups commenting on the public, the same topic, are limited to 15 minutes. With board consent, the board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation comment, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. The board will not comment on items unless they are agendized. However, the board reserves the right to clarify or correct any misinformation stated. Each individual speaker may only address the board 1 time per unagendized or agendized item. As per board bylaws, during agendized items, the board president reserves the right to ask any speaker to stay on the current agendized topic. Once warned and the speaker continues off topic, the board president reserves the right to ask them to be seated or to have their microphone muted. Are we... What? No, there's 6 people for non-agendized. 7. 2 minutes, yeah.
Hello, my name is Sheila Moles. I'm a parent of a senior student. I'm a retired peace officer and administrator from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I state this only to illustrate or document my over 2 decades of experience in responding to and involved with policymaking specific to crisis management and emergency operation procedures. Last week's incident is just what I see as another example of how this consolidation being rushed and what accompanies such an endeavor was mismanaged by Superintendent Ms. Beal in March when she assured the board prior to voting for consolidation, "We're ready to go." My main issue is with the rush to consolidate important and vital aspects of infrastructure have been overlooked. The school lucked out in that last Thursday's incident turned out to be benign, and thankfully no one was physically hurt, though it could be argued that emotional and psychological effects are wide and large. California code requires schools to have a comprehensive school safety plan, a CSSP, that outline all steps a school can and must take during emergencies, including tactical, responsive, and active shooter scenarios. My concern, given the consolidation of the schools and the new staff on campus, is how much training, if any, was provided to staff so that they are equipped with the tools to ensure our students' safety. The events that transpired demonstrated huge deficiencies that could have proven lethal. While it's presumed that staff from the formerly Annalee campus have some training on these policies and are familiar with the procedures, however, there are a lot of staff from the former El Molino campus now at West County, and I question if they have been informed and trained accordingly. Notwithstanding, have the CSSPs for the newly designated high school been updated since the consolidation to include the now merged campuses? All of this and more is very concerning, and it leaves me to wonder if other vital aspects of daily infrastructure designed to ensure the safety and security of our children have been dangerously overlooked, while Ms. Beal and the board concentrating on rebranding and attempting to make the new school look pretty and feel inclusive, which is akin to putting lipstick on a pig. Our community and children metaphorically dodged a bullet last week that could have very well been literal. I hope and pray that Ms. Beal finds the humility to pause, step
Thank you
back,
for your comment.
and finally start to acknowledge the
Will you cut the
deficiencies
mic,
in this
please?
hasty consolidation and shift the focus onto real issues that came with this decision.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Janelle Robintini. And just a reminder, no clapping between speakers. Thank you. So you don't want to speak? So you have something on the agenda that you want to talk about? Okay. Judy Gooden?
Good evening. I'm Judy Gooden. I'm a resident and a former student of this high school. I wanted to publicly thank you once again. This board, the administrative staff, the principals and teachers have stood their ground in support of high school consolidation, despite threats, bullying, both in person and online, and heckling at these meetings. You have persevered, and I am proud of you. Perseverance in the face of adversity is a character trait all of our students and all of us should aspire to. You have successfully role modeled this trait despite the difficulties. The failed recall made it very apparent that the majority of this community agrees with me. This board continues to demonstrate that even when it is most difficult, you can take a stand for what is best to ensure that educational opportunities are available through enrichment classes for all students while maintaining financial viability. Thank you again, and please know that I do not stand alone. You are supported and appreciated by a large majority of the West County community.
Just so we have your speaker card correct, Janelle, can you let me, what item is it that you want to speak on? Okay, so the contracts? Okay, thank you. Did she, okay, you have 2 cards, okay. All right, Christy Ramsey?
So I'm here once again. I was here at the last board meeting to speak about violence. As you may remember, my daughter was attacked on her second day of school here, and it seems as if the violence is just escalating. What is going to happen about this? So this was just a false alarm to everyone, but this happened 2 times. Monday night, you were informed of a possible shooter. None of the parents knew about it. We should be able to make that decision, not you, whether a kid should be here at school when there's a possible threat. On Thursday, the Press Democrat announced it before we even knew about it. To me, that's not acceptable, and it's not acceptable to many of the parents here. With this shooter, the possible shooter, the Laguna campus, they don't even have an intercom. The teachers had to find out from students texting each other. How is that keeping our kids safe? There's no plan in place. Why is there not a plan in place? This is something that has happened across the country many, many times, and we don't want this in our community. And I'm here to address COVID again. I'm a healthcare worker, and the way that this is set up here in the school is not safe for the kids, their families, and whoever else they come in contact with. You look at pictures, still, kids without masks, shoulder to shoulder. This is not safe. They're not equipped with the brain power to make these types of decisions. It's not their fault. It's anatomically the way that they are built at this point at their age. It's not their fault. To put them in this situation, to try to make these decisions to protect themselves and their families, we need to separate this school. It needs to go back to the way it was.
And then our next speaker is Mary Lou. You wanted to speak, sorry, we missed you on the appointment of student reps, but if you want to speak now. Thank you. Hi.
Hello, good evening. Thank you. I'm Marilu Saldaña. I'm school counselor here. And buenas noches, soy Marilu Saldaña, consejera escolar aquí de la prepa. Yes, briefly, I wanted to speak in regards to Dylan. I wanted to proudly say that being his school counselor for the past 3 years has been my honor. Also, the fact that we have a first-generation bilingual student rep is huge. Representation of the Latinx community is greatly needed in this community. The other thing is in regards to thank you to our school principal that mentioned about La Raza Unida. La Raza Unida is here for all students. We are trying to provide a place, a solution to help our student population culture, build a supportive environment to help our students. So to the community, to students who are listening, join us. La Raza Unida is open. We have meetings on Wednesdays, and we have a lot of work to do. The work is not over. We need to create and continue to help our student culture. So, Dylan, we have a lot of work to do. We can do this. And again, I invite students to come and join us, bring ideas, and we need to support and provide solutions to our students and families. So, gracias, buenas noches, thank you.
Thank you. And Tony, you have a couple written.
I do. I have 2 written statements that were emailed. The first one says, my name is Sandra Drake, Annalee class of 1987. I have 3 children, one who graduated from Annalee last year, 1 junior here now, and 1 8th grader. Regarding the upcoming appointment of the new board trustee, I wanted to alert the board and the public of a rumor that certain members of the community are threatening to backdoor a recall by calling for a referendum on the soon-to-be appointed Board of Trustee if they don't get the candidate of their choosing. Under the board appointment rules, with just 540 signatures, a small group can cause a special election to challenge the appointment at a cost of at least $100,000 to the district. I want to encourage the public to accept the board's decision, whatever it is, and reject a referendum. The new appointee will be required to run in the next election anyway. In fact, there are 4 seats up for election in November of 2022. A special election to be held just months earlier will serve no benefit to the students of this district, especially given the cost. Why does $100,000 plus buy you? This is equal to 4 sections of classes. These are teachers' jobs and opportunities for our kids that will need to be cut because a small group of people can't wait just a few months until the next election. Please resist the temptation to call for a costly special election and instead accept the board appointee, whomever it is. At the next election, just months after the special election would be held, the voters can decide on a whole new slate of board members. For now, though, there is no possible benefit to our kids or to our teachers to waste the money on a special election. Thank you, Sandra Drake. And a second one is on the bus route. It says, good evening. Once again, I'm writing to inquire about the rural area school bus routes that have been canceled without notice, specifically Route 213, 116, and Daywald Road. My son has attended all Sebastopol area schools since kindergarten. He has ridden that bus route since 1st grade. As a single parent with no help at all, I have relied on the bus to get my son to and from school so that I can work to pay my mortgage, put food on the table. I have pulled my son out and put him on the independent study program because it is too difficult to get him to and from school daily, and I cannot afford to leave work early every day to get him from campus. I'm wondering if there's a plan to bring the bus route back for next year or even this year. Relocating is not an option for us, and my son does not thrive on the independent study program. Please let the people who need this service know what the future plans are ASAP. Thank you, Jennifer Lynn.
And then we actually have one more speaker card that I think is in the audience. Alexa Pena. Is this when you wanted to speak? Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to speak on the incident that happened on Thursday. I was in my AP psychology class, and my friend got a text from one of her friends that there was going to be someone with a gun, and it was very credible. And I was really scared at the time, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. And we told my teacher, but she didn't really believe us because it happened on Tuesday, and it didn't end up being credible. And so we eventually heard from one of my friend's other friends that we were on a lockdown, but we didn't hear because the speakers weren't loud enough. So we were just going on with our class without knowing that we were supposed to be on a lockdown. And we told our teacher that, that we were actually on a lockdown, and she said, well, we can close the door if that makes you guys feel any better. So she closed the door, and then about 5 minutes later, she got confirmation from another teacher that we actually were on lockdown. So we stopped our lesson, and then we got on the floor and turned off all the lights. And a lot of people were crying and having panic attacks, and I was really freaking out myself, and I was wondering about my other friends and if they had heard about the lockdown, because the speakers, not only in the main building, but in all of the buildings, they are not very easy to hear, especially if you are in class. And so as the lockdown went on, a lot of rumors were being spread about door handles moving, and there was a police scanner going around, and people were just like listening to what was happening. And a lot of people were really, really, really scared. And eventually when our parents heard, my parents were freaking out. But I'm really glad that everyone was okay, but no one's backpacks were checked besides the person I think who was arrested, and that really scares me. Oh.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move on to our consent calendar this evening. Can I have a motion for the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I second.
Okay. Any questions on consent? And we don't have any speakers on consent. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Students? Thank you. Okay, action on items heard in closed session.
There was no action taken.
Thank you. Okay, now we will go on to our student board representative reports. So Peyton, would you like to give your report this evening?
Hi, my name is Peyton Hamner. I go to Laguna High School. And in the next few minutes, I hope to break the stigma on Laguna, because I know it's seen as a place that kids get in trouble and they go there. But it's just a place where kids needed help and weren't noticed until they got in trouble. But some of the things that we have started is our new classes. Statistics for Life is one theme that I take. And we had just did a presentation about what we are going to be when we're older. And in the past few weeks, I think that's helped me more than anything my other high schools have done. It has prepared me, and it's only been a month into school. But I've also seen our 10,000 degrees speaker, and she's already helping me with the first steps to getting enrolled into the JC. And I feel that not only have I learned more in the past month than I have in the past 3 years at a normal high school, I feel I've been supported more, and I could not be more appreciative to these teachers that I barely even know yet. Another thing that we have is the West County Health. As a student who is couch surfing, the school is my support system, and they have been an amazing support system with the West County Health. I already have dentist and doctor's appointments set up. They help me get to them. I've also spoken with the SAY program, which helps kids that are homeless before and after they are 18. And I have their number and will be in contact with them when I turn 18 to help with housing. Advisory classes that we have been taking. from the beginning to now, I've seen kids open up in those classes and be honest and talk about feelings, which is insane. Because these advisory classes have not worked at normal high schools, and it is not because of the kids, it is because the teachers treated it as a joke. I'm also in leadership, and for leadership, we've also are in the process of getting a gender-neutral bathroom, which the kids are very passionate about, and our leadership is very diverse. It has 2-3 people from all the friend groups, but not only are there many friend groups on campus, there are no problems. We are all a community, and I've never felt that in a high school. We're also going to have activities hopefully soon to get the kids closer, because Elmo is a big campus and there is very few of us. So we do spread out, but we are hoping to get people more interactive soon. And we are also creating thank you letters for people who have donated to our closet, which I've also been grateful to go into and get free clothes and shoes. And that's about all I have to say about Laguna.
The 2021-2022 school year at West County High has been a roller coaster with its ups and downs since the first day of school. During the first couple of weeks at West County High, many physical altercations involving students occurred on campus, and many confirmed cases of COVID-19 among students in the school were confirmed, causing exposed students to find themselves obliged to quarantine at home. Simultaneously, the leadership class has been hard at work since the week before the first day of school, in order to bring joy to all students who are adapting to the new consolidated school environment. The leadership class has put together Spirit Days such as Bleed Red and Blue and Neon Spirit Day the last couple of weeks in support of our volleyball and football teams during game days. Apart from this, the leadership class has also put together a welcome back dance titled Beach Party on August 28th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., and it took place outside on the main quad. Masks were required. We had a successful event since we had a turnout of about 300 students. In addition to this, the leadership class also organized an event for seniors called Senior Sunrise, which took place on September 3rd at 6 a.m. on the football field. Free donuts were provided for everyone. In addition to all of this, complaints of students regarding long and time-consuming lunch lines were common during the first couple of weeks, but the staff has been working hard to fix the problem. Other students also expressed their concerns about what appears to them to be overcrowding on the main quad and hallways considering the current COVID-19 pandemic. Many clubs have also started to take shape in the new school. Among them, Black Student Union, Book Club, Raza Unida, and Speech and Debate. La Raza Unida was formed by students from La Mecha Club at Annalee and La Raza Club at El Molino in an effort to unify the student body. Disagreements between the co-presidents of Raza Unida happened as expected, but have come to terms and divided power equally and came up with a name based on the vote of the club's members. In other news, this past week has been nerve-wracking for both students and parents. On Monday night of last week, the school received reports of an Instagram post warning students of a possible school shooting threat. Families were informed that the threat did not appear to be credible, and the school remained open and functional on Tuesday. Then, on Thursday of last week, the entire school was put on lockdown, which lasted a little longer than an hour during fourth period at approximately 11:20 a.m. During the lockdown, students claimed to be confused and disturbed at the fact that no additional information was given to them or teachers for a period of about 15 minutes. Most parents were scared for the safety of their children, so they drove to campus and waited until 1 p.m. to pick them up. Students were given the choice to leave campus early or stay for the remainder of the day. Later that day, West County High families received an email from the school principal. Administration received a second-hand report of a student who was possibly in possession of a firearm. The email read, "Law enforcement presence was requested. No gun was located and no injuries were reported. The investigation concluded that there was no threat to anyone. Families in the community were not informed of the incident via school administration as soon as it began, but instead via social media and texts of their concerned children.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to association reports. It's hard, I can't see. Okay, Lily. I can't see with the bright lights, so thank you for just coming down.
Let's see if I can read this with the low lights. Okay. Good evening. I'm Lily Smedshammer, president of the West Sonoma County Teachers Association. As we've heard here tonight, last week's lockdown needs to serve as a wake-up call for the district. For teachers, the most concerning aspect of the lockdown was the inability to hear the speaker system. There are areas of campus where we can't even hear the bell. I personally filed a maintenance request on this issue in April of last spring for my own room, and again on August 11th. We're all well aware of the massive amount of work done over the summer to bring our campuses together, but this should have been a priority as a fundamental safety issue, tested and repairs made before students were brought to campus. Another area of concern is that our new employees and employees new to our Sebastopol campus were not trained in emergency procedures and didn't receive a proper orientation at the start of the year. 16 years ago, when I began here, there used to be a day of orientation for new hires. Topics covered were how to file a maintenance request, use the grading system, who to go to for different needs that come up during the year, and of course, safety. We want the district to return to this practice. The WSCTA requests that the district have an additional paid day of professional development for new hires, and that an emphasis be placed on emergency procedures. And we feel that's important, not just for certificated staff, but for classified as well. In October, the WSCTA will submit our Sunshine Letter and begin contract negotiations for the 22-23 school year. In light of the persistent difficulty the district has had in filling teaching positions this year and the rising cost of living in our county, we will continue addressing the urgent need to bring our district's average teacher salary up to at least the average teacher salary for the state of California. We look forward to working with the district in achieving this shared goal of improving our ability to recruit and retain our best educators for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have someone from our classified union? No. Okay. Thank you. All right, principals. Shauna, do you want to?
It's okay. I can read it. Hey, good evening. It's really good to see everybody here tonight. The past week has been especially difficult for our community, and I will be commenting on these events after I give some updates about other things that have gone on campus. Our lunch lines are now far more manageable. We are setting up fencing that allows our lines to move more efficiently. The line is typically gone in approximately 10 to 12 minutes, and there is plenty of food still in the cafeteria. So we believe that we are handling that as the issues have arisen. So we are adding more benches to the campus. Not all of them will be in the quad, but they will be placed out in good proximity to the cafeteria. And we're getting those benches on September 30th. So at least we have a nice date for that, and we can expect more seating for the students. The administrative team has now visited each English class, which if we visit every single English class, it means that we have visited all of the students. We have visited all of our English classes to present our behavioral expectations that are written out in our student planner for the 2021-2022 school year. We have reminded the students that while the campus looks open, it's actually a closed campus. Students who have afternoon classes are allowed to leave campus. So students without an afternoon class, typically older students, they are allowed to leave. However, the ones that do have an afternoon class are not supposed to leave. And we have been making that abundantly clear to all of our students. We did issue warnings for the first couple of weeks, but now we are calling home for students who have gone off campus and making sure that parents are aware of the situation. Our cafeteria has plenty of food, and students should be on campus accessing the lunches that we already have. We have 4 administrators and 3 campus supervisors walking the campus to ensure that students are following all school rules and trying to also shore up the areas where students often do leave and go and things like that to Safeway. Last Friday night, we hosted Vallejo High School for football, and both of our JV and varsity teams won, and they won big. The home bleachers were full, and the energy was great. The students, the pep band, and the cheerleaders were really dialed in, and it was a lot of fun to watch. We are extremely grateful to our parent community for working at the snack shack, doing all of the concessions, the prepping, the selling, the cleaning. I would say they do make it look pretty fun in there, but I also know it's not just fun. It's obviously a lot of work, and we really appreciate what they do. So thank you to all of our volunteers out there. We also have volleyball happening right now, and we are 5-2, and the team is playing really well. We're going to start league play next week, and cross country is up and running. And they finished strong at Spring Lake, and they have a couple more meets coming up this week and next week. Now commenting on some of the more difficult aspects that we experienced last week. We had 2 issues that caused campus disruption. Both issues involved second-hand information regarding a student bringing a weapon to campus. Both were investigated by Sebastopol police and found not to be credible. What does not credible mean? It means that we and the police could not find any evidence to support the second-hand information that came to us. And really, that's the good news. So when we get any sort of idea that there's a threat, we want to go through all of the steps, and we want to find that it is not credible. So in many ways, the system was working the way it was supposed to, while not perfectly. I give you that. The key similarity is due to both threats had secondhand information. They were different in the fact that we became aware of one threat on Monday night, and the police had started investigating that threat on Monday night, and they had already deemed it not credible, which is why we also chose to have school on Tuesday. Whereas the threat on Thursday, students were already at school while the threat was being investigated, which prompted the lockdown due to the nature of the particular threat. This experience has helped us identify some issues that need to be addressed, and they are being addressed. Our public address system is being repaired as we speak. In fact, I believe that almost all of the repairs have already happened. I am holding meetings this week to hear from all of the department chairs about what their experience was like in the lockdown and to hear what do teachers and classrooms need. And so those meetings have already started, and they will continue throughout the week and probably a little bit into next week. So they're telling us what worked, what didn't, and what do they need. And we are collecting that information, and I'll be acting on that quickly. Lastly, I regret the sparse communication to families. I genuinely do regret that. There was a lot of things happening all at the same time, from students to law enforcement to staff that we were working on all at the same time. And what should have also been a priority with all of those things was to make sure that I also communicated with the parent population and all of the families, because that really could have reduced much of the anxiety. It could not outrun the rumor mill, but it could have reduced the anxiety. So, and I think that that's really important, and I just want to acknowledge that. We have now put in place a procedure that will allow us to communicate faster and earlier to help quell the rumors and possibly reduce the fear. around these events. So we sat down and we planned it out exactly when it would happen, who would do it, and how we will go through those levels of communication. I have spoken to and emailed many families who shared their concerns with me about how the lockdown went, and I want the board to know that we have a robust safety plan for emergencies, and the staff training will be happening in the next 2 weeks. Also, next week we are planning a safety assembly for our students in partnership with the Sebastopol Police Department. We will be discussing bullying, issues that could possibly lead to lockdowns, rumors, social media, and other aspects of campus life. And that will be happening next week. We don't have a particular day yet because we're also working with other calendared constraints. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight. Hello. First, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening with us and West County Health. I can't tell you how valuable the relationship is with West County Health to the Laguna population, and I so appreciated that Peyton also shared her experiences with that. Feels like there's two parts to student supports, in that we've been missing a significant portion because we know students' health and social well-being are integrally linked to their success in school, and we've never had the means to fill that gap. Having Erin Ello on our campus and part of our school community has helped kids in ways that I never thought possible. We are not yet a community school, but we're feeling more and more like that's where, I lost my space, please. We're not a community school, but I feel like we're more and more going in that direction, and that we're building relationships with the students and the families to support our students, and in turn, our kids have a higher rate of attendance. Right now, we're at about a 95% attendance rates, and I attribute it to this. We're making sure that our kids have groceries, that their healthcare needs are met, and that they have food every day at school. We also are becoming part of the Environmental Justice Coalition. So we formed a team of students who are participating in the Environmental Justice Coalition. These students are working with 2 of our teachers and are participating with other schools across the county to form an action plan that will have a local impact on environmental justice. As participants in the program, the students are giving a mentor from the county and are exposed to workshops on environmental justice issues in our community. They work on the project in their sustainable living class and with their teacher, Hallie Richards, and also with our environmental science teacher, Kate Weitzinger. We actually have enough student interest that we're trying to field 2 teams, but getting all the students to and from the meetings is a challenge, and we don't have yet a solution for that. As also Peyton talked about, 10,000 Degrees started this week, and we're so excited to have Gabby Esquivas on our campus. So our 10,000 Degrees fellow is here on campus with us at least 4 days a week. We've developed 3 priorities in working with 10,000 Degrees. We want 100% FAFSA completion. So when I've talked about FAFSA before, it's a federal financial aid. We want every student to fill out the CCC application to apply to junior colleges. And we want every senior to take Counseling 270, which is the introductory counseling class that kids get college and high school credits for. Gabby and our counselor, Shannon, are working to bring Counseling 270 to our school so the kids can take, all seniors can take Counseling 270 on the Laguna campus after school hours next semester. And these 3 priorities are chosen with some degree of care because all have a high rates of, research shows that these 3 things have a high rate of post-secondary success, and that's what we want for our kids, to not just make sure they're successful with us, but also successful when they graduate. So disadvantaged students who are exposed to early college credit, like Counseling 270 or like our SRJC articulated classes, have higher rates of post-secondary success compared to grade level peers. They're 11% more likely to earn a college degree and 29% more likely to enroll in 2-year colleges. The last thing I want to talk about is the Rooster Fellowship. We have a team that we are working on with for Sonoma County Office of Education. So our team is consistent of Bruce Myers, Bobby Rose, and Tony Beal. And we are going to analyze and assess the efficacy of our practice as it relates to student learning and student engagement. So the Rooster Fellowship was started after the death of Andy Lopez when he should have been in school. And it forced us all to contend with the question of what can we do in our roles as a school system to make sure that kids want to come to school, and ask the question of what would Andy be doing now if he were sitting in class that day. The people who have agreed to go on this journey with me are asking this question. What can we do to make school engaging? How can we make students want to be in class? And I look forward to reporting back on what our team comes up with. Lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge all of the rhinos who are watching this from home. After the last meeting, in our student leadership meeting, we talked about having the experience of a student who's watching this after the fact. And many of them poke fun of me for not being able to make it through a board meeting without getting choked up and crying. So to all of them, I just want to say thank you. I do this job because I believe in you and I love you. And thank you for coming to Laguna and letting me be a part of your community.
Thank you. All right, now we will go on to board member reports. So Julie, do you have a report tonight?
Yesterday, I attended a Governing in Time of Crisis workshop that was online. It was really interesting, gave a lot of great information about particularly COVID and how to handle situations like that. Also, tomorrow I will be visiting Laguna, which I'm really looking forward to. And as far as the incident that occurred this week, I really have been reading a lot about Columbine locks, and I would like those investigated. One of the reasons is because the locks we have right now apparently need a key to be locked.
I think we have Columbine locks.
We have security
I
locks.
thought
We have
we
security
did
locks?
I refuse to call them Columbine locks. They are security locks. They all lock from the interior of the classroom.
But don't they require a key?
Yes, and everyone has a key.
That's the difference.
No, it is not actually a security lock. Only locks from the inside. We do not do push-button locks in schools.
Oh, okay. Well, I was reading about them, and that's what I was concerned about. It was kids that ran into a room not being able to lock the door. So that was a concern I had after reading about it. So anyway, that's my report.
I don't have much to report other than I've just been really impressed with the resilience of the kids in the district and being at events and seeing everything they've been through. You know, the kids they're leading the way on how to carry on through a lot of this, even our board representatives. So I applaud you guys. I also applaud the humility of the district to be open and motivated to refine this process with safety and emergency. Thank you, Shauna, for doing the work to get the feedback and make this better. I was in San Francisco with my husband at an appointment when we got word of this. I have a kid in the district, and you know, I was pretty freaked out as well, but I had the peace of mind and got word from my son and you know, some of their cousins that the teachers, you know, had them. Excuse me, it's a pretty upsetting thing as a parent, but they had done things to keep the kids safe. And so as much as we need to still improve this process, I was happy to know that everybody was working tirelessly to protect the kids and keep them safe. So thank you for that.
Jeannie?
Thank you. Yes, I, like Julie, attended the CSBA conference yesterday. It was a great training, lots of great information about COVID and about handling board meeting situations. So that was really excellent. I very much appreciated them putting that on. They always do such a good job for us. And I too want to just say thank you to Shauna and the rest of the staff, our teachers, and for how they handled themselves and the courage that it takes to say that we're not perfect and that we're going to make it better. And I just really, really appreciate knowing, and I just also want to tell Tony, thank you for taking the moment you did to call each of us to let us know what was going on. Of course, we were hearing as well as everybody else before, but I knew that our administrators are obviously dealing with the situation and don't have time to make all those extra phone calls or send emails. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and I just want to acknowledge how difficult the events were last week as a parent. I feel you, Angie. That's my worst nightmare, to get that phone call and have that experience. And I know equally as scary for everyone, obviously even more scary for the people who are on campus. So I want to acknowledge just how emotional that time was. And I think I appreciate that we're open to feedback and that you've already been able to implement some of the changes for the feedback that we're hearing. And I think, I'm on our safety team with the county and have a lot of experience working with some of the disasters and the safety plans that we have in place that come to the board, and we approve those, we look at those in detail, but oftentimes the after action report, and fortunately we were inexperienced this time to, as you said, the good news is that we made it through, but the after action report is almost the most important part of that whole experience and what we do with that feedback. So I just want to appreciate your openness to, I know it can be hard. We receive a lot of feedback. I know it can be hard sometimes, but your openness to be able to implement right away some of those changes. And just, I know you've been responding personally to a lot of parents, not even just taking emails, but meeting with them and having personal phone call conversations. So to Shauna, I want to appreciate all the time that you're taking to do some of that outreach, and just hopeful that we never have to have an experience like this again. And if we do, I know we'll be much more prepared next time to be able to implement some of the things that we needed to this time. So thank you. And with that, we'll go to Tony.
Okay, so for the superintendent's report, first I have a letter from a student. It says, Dear Miss Beal and the board, thank you so much for the $420 Dorothy Arnold Scholarship. It will help a lot with my college expenses at UC Santa Cruz. I really appreciate it. Also, please excuse the delay in writing this letter. I had the wonderful opportunity to spend my summer as a counselor at a remote summer camp where we did not have internet access or the ability to print letters off of a computer. Thank you again, Rafaela Pineta. That was very nice. I also wanted to say a little bit about the lockdown debrief and appreciate Shauna and her staff with all the work that they've done. We learned a lot from the potential threat and lockdown, and are thankful that there was no harm to students or staff. Based on the debrief we have, and this kind of underscores things that Shauna has already said, created parent messages that can be sent immediately and then at specified times throughout the incident, established student release protocols that include the ability of parents to text permission for release to school staff, established student release parent pickup area at the JV baseball field at the far end of the school. Parents can assemble and park at the Sebastopol Community Center. This aligns with the Sebastopol Police Department plans. Confirm that all classrooms and offices are equipped with locks that lock from the inside. The main corridors leading to the outside of the school cannot be locked this way per fire code, but there are bar locks that are easily locked from inside with a specified tool. We have scheduled an update to the PA system. Actually, that update, I think, happened today. There was a check of the PA system today, and I believe most of the areas are now working, and established protocol for contacting rooms that are not accessed by the PA system. We've confirmed a chain of command chart and roles and responsibilities during a crisis. We've scheduled training with staff and students to review the lockdown and other emergency procedures, and we've increased access to counseling supports for students and implemented advisory curriculum centered on social emotional supports. We are committed to continuing to debrief the incident with staff and make additional updates and modifications as needed. There were questions about where our comprehensive safety plan is. It is posted on the district website. It's under facilities maintenance and operations. That comprehensive safety plan is updated routinely each March, but it's also updated after we have an incident like we had this past week. There was also questions about our bathrooms. All our current facilities comply with building and construction codes at the time that these facilities were built. We will be starting the facility master planning process next month, and bathroom evaluation will be a part of that process and the process of modernization as we move forward. And that is my report.
Thank you, Tony. All right, now we will move on to our discussion action items for this evening. Education services, item 2, discussion of comprehensive high school rebranding process. Tony.
Put my glasses back on here. Okay. So as background, on March 16th of 2021, the Board of Trustees approved the rebranding of the Consolidated High School and the Annalee and Laguna campuses. At their May 5th special board meeting, the board reviewed new fiscal information and voted to pause the rebranding timeline until such a time when the budget allowed for full implementation. The board gave direction to the superintendent at their May 12th meeting to use the name of West County High as the bridge name for the combined school until additional financial information was known and current students could be consulted in the process. So the purpose of the agenda item tonight is to have a discussion on where we are with the rebranding process and what the next steps are for board direction.
All right, since this is a discussion item, we don't need, obviously, a motion or an action, but I'm open to taking any suggestions from the board. I think in the past we've talked about surveying students, trying to get a better sense of just the atmosphere, environment on campus and their feelings towards rebranding, and would love to get some input or feedback from the board on where we are currently so that Tony can kind of get direction on her next steps as far as how we want to move forward. Jeannie?
I am in full agreement that we need to follow through with our original plan, which was that we were going to survey our students. I think that's extremely vital that we do that. We do need to get an idea of what the kids are thinking, how are they feeling, what's the climate, and what are their thoughts with this process. And I think it's important that the board get their input. I also think we should be asking staff, probably a separate survey, just my opinion, that the staff need to tell us how they're feeling and give us their thoughts and ideas too. So I'd like to recommend that we proceed with that survey, and that that's what I guess I'd like to recommend that we consider doing, and because it's what we did talk about. So,
any other board comment?
I'd also like to recommend that we survey the parents, or is there, I don't know what the metric would be as far as getting community input. I know that we know a lot of that already, but just, I know we've done parent surveys before, so I'd add that piece as well.
Thank you. Julie, any additional?
I agree with that. I think that both things would be a good idea. I really want the student input, and I would like the community input as well, because it's the school belongs to the community as well as the kids that are currently here. So I agree with both Angie and Jeannie.
And then as far as, I have a question, Tony, as far as timeline, so I hear the general consensus is, yes, we want to do more information gathering, get some additional data that we could bring back to the board. At what point do you need a decision? I mean, at some point we need to either say, yes, we're rebranding, or no, we're not? And what is the timeline that we need to have that information to you as far as, I guess my question is, are we just staying status quo for the spring and really looking towards the fall, or is there actual changes that we can make in the spring and or reversing backwards that could happen in the spring?
It's my understanding, and I'm looking out at Shauna, I don't think Mike or Joe are here.
They're not, but Shauna's upstairs.
Okay. In initial conversations that I've had with our two athletic directors, I believe that we have already begun the process of ordering uniforms for our spring sports, given the fact that there's such a backup in terms of getting those. We've also have, for this year, we have completed the process of changing the name to West County for the bridge name, and to change mid-year, I think would have impact on our seniors.
Okay.
So I think it would be a change that would happen for next school year, for the fall. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So it sounds like we want to survey staff, students, parents, community, and what is our timeline for potentially bringing this back to the board?
Well, I was kind of thinking that maybe you, Kelly, and I, and Tony, in our role as the vice president and president and the superintendent, would work on a survey. The other board members could give Tony input as to their thoughts and ideas on questions or whatever, and then try to do that survey maybe in October. I don't know if that's giving us enough time, but that would be my thought. And if not, then by November, I would think. I don't know what other trustees feel. Is that too rushed, or is that a good timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're not really talking about any changes taking place until the fall, I mean, I would like to be more thoughtful and get the feedback that we need. I mean, I also want to acknowledge that this is causing a lot of angst in our community. And so I know that a lot of people would like to have a decision either way. And I know that, you know, we have very small, very vocal groups on both sides that have kind of come together to really create some divisiveness in the community, and it would be nice to just be able to move through this rather than having it continue to stir
I totally
and
agree.
cause
Yeah.
challenges, because ultimately that impacts our students, and we don't
My
want
thought,
that to.
my thought, Kelly, would be, and the rest of the board, that if we wait to do a survey too late into like November or December, we're not going to get the kind of input, because people get so busy with the holiday season that then we would end up just having to wait, I think. So if we can do it sooner than that, then that gives us time to regurgitate all of that input and then make some thoughtful decision maybe at the beginning of next.
Yeah, no, I would
next
think we
year.
would want, I'm saying yes by November, but November doesn't feel too long for me, because I think we have, it feels good that if we just say by November, we would bring back all the survey data, and that gives us time to be good about giving time to get it out in the community, giving it a few weeks to be live, getting good input, so people don't feel rushed and having to respond.
Exactly, yeah, and I think we can give them plenty of time to do that, so. And then we can kind of hash out, talk about between us, you know, what that looks like.
Well, I think in our criteria for making an ultimate decision, I mean, I think we're gonna have to think through, like, what does the response on the survey mean? Like, if we have 20% saying one way or the other way, like, how much is the end that we need to be able to say yay or nay on a decision? So I think as a board, we need to be thinking about that criteria of how we ultimately decide. Any input from the students on this? Okay, thank you. Any additional input from the board? Okay, we do have a couple comment items on this, comment cards on this item. So, Janelle, I think this is the one, this is you're up.
Are you still doing 2 minutes or 3 minutes now?
There's two, how many letters do we have? I think we have letters, so we have two speakers on this. Do you want to do the 3 minutes? Can we do 3 minutes? Is everyone good? Okay.
Sorry,
yeah,
was
3
that
minutes.
2 or 3?
3.
3, can you give me a second to reset the clock?
I needed 3 last time, not tonight.
Yeah, sorry, you don't get that much time. Yeah. Well, we can't see. It's like very bizarre. Yeah.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, you're on. Janelle, you
Thanks.
can go. Thank you.
Trustees, Ms. Beal, thank you for being here tonight. My name's Janelle Robintini. How could any of you in your right minds feel good about entering into this outrageously expensive and unnecessary rebranding contract with Varsity?
Talking about, right. This is actually the next item. I'm sorry.
What?
Varsity Brand is the next item.
Okay, well, is not Varsity not who's rebranding our school?
Two different items. Yeah, that's the next item. It's considered. Yeah, you can go on the next one. We just it's Brown Act, so if it's about Varsity Brands, we need you to talk about the next one.
Okay.
Sorry. You will get to talk. I'm sorry. Okay, Adam, you're on rebranding. Adam Parks.
Good evening. So, a couple things. I can't believe we're having discussions about branding and you just interviewed the whole board and everybody had their say and no talk of budget was brought up. We're still rumors and innuendo. We have no idea what's been spent so far. The rumor today is that some numbers of $130,000 were put out. That's certainly not the $20,000 that Tony told us it was going to cost back in May, but I bet that it's much, much higher than that. We had poor communication. We had scares in our school last week, and we're talking about spending more money on rebranding in the spring. That's madness. When is this board going to start taking fiscal responsibility for this school district? It should not be a single banner put up. We shouldn't even have Varsity Brands on the agenda tonight. We should not be spending $1 on anything other than making this consolidation safe and effective for our kids. If you want to spend some money, spend it on a communications officer. Spend it on somebody that can put together complete sentences in communications to parents without question marks, is there a gun on campus? Let's spend it on things like improved text messaging services. I can text my entire community and customer base in 30 seconds. I've got people all over the country. Yet people were getting texts from their kids thinking there was an active shooter and there were guns all over. It was madness. And yet we're going to talk about a rebranding contract for better new uniforms that may be obsolete next week. Why would we be talking about those things? This falls under bond money, as far as I know, because I was told that the rebranding stuff would all come under bond money. You're shaking your head, Kelly, but that's where the rebranding money is coming from, is bond money, was what Tony told us last May. No?
No.
So the rebranding money is coming out of the general budget? That's even worse.
You want to clarify that?
Where's it coming from then? Why are we spending $1? Are you telling me that the rebranding money is coming from, can't be used for anything other than rebranding? Because I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm really angry about this because my commitment to this school and the work that I've done as a parent and a volunteer for this school has been really, really intensely about saving programming and having better programs. We've consolidated the schools, which is absolutely the right thing to do. But now we're making a mess of it. You've angered the entire community. We talked about the small groups here and there that are angry. It's not small groups here and there. I got news for you. It's the whole community that's angry. And the reason is there's no communication. There is no fiscal responsibility whatsoever. And there is no plan of attack. All the board members that I talked to over the summer gave Tony the direction to pause rebranding, and now we have banners everywhere. And all of you told me, not all of you, but some of you said, we didn't realize what she was going to do. It's time maybe you did and put a yank in the chain.
Comment.
Okay. Bringing it back to the board, and again, no clapping, thank you. Any other additional comments from the board? So I think, Tony, I would like to say when we bring this item back, because I think there is a lot of, I saw today a lot of different figures going around online around what we've spent on rebranding. I know that those are not accurate. I think it would be helpful when we bring back this item to give the budget on rebranding and the timeline. Based on our discussion earlier, it's my understanding that spring is happening now, so there's no backing out of the spring at this point. So it'd be good to get those numbers and then also the budget categories, because I know that we can't spend bond money on uniforms, so it would be good to clear up some of that information in the community as well.
I feel strongly because we said from the beginning that we would give the students a voice. And it's important to me that when we say that we're going to do something, we do it. And, you know, that voice might be to keep the name Annalee or change the name to something completely different. But I feel it's important to give them the voice that we promised them.
I agree. Kelly? Thank you, Julie, for saying that, because that's exactly why this item came back. I'm the one that asked for it at the last meeting, was so that we could talk about next steps moving forward. Wasn't talking about yes or no or what we're doing, but honoring what we promised the students that we would do, and that is to let them give us their input.
Okay, any additional comments? Students, anything? Any other board members? All right, so where we're at is we will bring this item back by November. We will, Jeannie, myself, and Tony will work on surveys for staff, students, parents, and community. We will bring those data back. In addition, we will bring the figures that have been spent currently on rebranding so that we can have that as part of the conversation as well. Does that sound good? All right, thank you. All right, we're moving on to the next item. Consideration of approval of contract with Varsity Brands.
Okay, so background on where this came from. So back in March, we had a unity process that we were going through. We had 3 committees that had met, and after the board voted to rebrand, we needed to move forward with that rebranding process. At the time, I was approached by a staff member who said that they currently were using BSN Sports for uniforms, and that BSN Sports had a rebranding program that they had helped other schools with across the United States. And this staff member suggested that I reach out to BSN, to their staff, and see if they could possibly help us in the rebranding process. So I did that. I reached out to the representative from BSN, who then introduced me to members of Varsity Brands. And we had the conversation about, since we were currently already using BSN for our, all of our uniform needs, or for the majority of our uniform needs, that we could enter into an agreement with Varsity Brands to continue to use those, or use them for our uniform needs moving forward. The other conversation that we had at that time was that here at Annalee, and West County, we were, there was a conversation about yearbook, and about the fact that the staff were not happy with the yearbook vendor that we were using. And they were asking to if there were other vendors that could come give bids or have conversations with them. So at that time, Herf Jones, which is also a subsidiary or a part of the Varsity Brands big company, came to us with a proposal that they would work with us for 5 years, and as a result, we would get, I think, we get free yearbooks from working with them. And staff met with them. They liked what they had to offer, and so they said that they would be, they would wanted to enter into an agreement with Herff Jones. So then once we were already working with BSN Sports and we are already working with Herff Jones, that's when Varsity Brands came to us and said, since you're already working with Herff Jones and already working with Varsity Brands, we are willing to enter into an agreement with you. Well, we will help you through the rebranding process and give you a whole bunch of things for free, including their use of their artists, use of their rebranding process and the experts in the rebranding process, under the understanding that we would continue to use them. Now, at the time, the conversation was, we're already using them, and we don't have any intention of not using them. So it wasn't a risk in terms of continuing to use them at that time. So we did bring that. There was a presentation that happened on the rebranding. I want to say it was March 30th when we did that presentation to the board. And as part of that presentation on the process of consolidating and rebranding, we introduced two partnerships. One was the partnership with Varsity Brands, and we had the Varsity Brands representative who came and talked to us at that meeting and talked about what they could do. And we also had a representative from Leadership and Design, which is a company that helps leadership move through the process of consolidation. Both of those companies, entities came, made presentations. We did not ask the board for an approval of the contracts at that time. One was because the Leadership and Design, which is not what we're talking about in terms of Varsity Brands, but the Leadership and Design is actually not a contract because the Sonoma County Office of Education is paying for them. So it was an MOU with SCO that they would pay for them. So the Leadership and Design was not a contract we were actually entering into. Since that time, I've met numerous times with Varsity Brands and discussed with them an issue with their contract. And the issue with their contract is that the original contract that was proposed that we continue with Varsity Brands for a period of 5 years. The issue with that, continuing with them for 5 years, is that over a period of 5 years, we will get to a point where we exceed the bid limit, because we are allowed to enter into contracts, and the current amount is $96,500, I believe, that we can, $97,500 is the current contract limit that we can enter in without having to go to bid. So we went back to Varsity Brands and said, we are not wanting to continue with this agreement that we have with you, and these are the reasons why. And they said, that is fine with us. And so tonight you have a revised proposed contract with Varsity Brands. The revised proposed contract with Varsity Brands is different in that it says that we will continue in a relationship with them for 5 years or until we reach an amount of $75,000. Now, when you look at how much we have currently spent with Varsity Brands companies, we have already reached the $75,000 because we have entered into a contract already with Herff Jones for the yearbook, which is close to $50,000, and we've spent approximately $25,000 on the current uniforms that we have paid for. So we have already gotten to the $75,000, which essentially makes the contract complete. Now, the issue is that if you were to not approve this contract tonight, the Varsity Brands has already given us the materials for rebranding. All of the banners that are around the school have been given to us for free. There has been no cost because it has been a part of the agreement that we have with them. If you were to not approve this contract, we would need to pay for those banners. In addition to, we're going to use BSN Sports for our uniforms because that's who we use, and we're going to continue with Herff Jones for the yearbook. So we'll continue to still use those companies because those are the ones we have chosen, and we will have to pay for the banners that they have provided as part of that original contract with them. So I don't know if you have questions?
Any clarifying questions before we open it up to, we have a speaker on this item.
I was
so
going to
wanna-
ask you if,
We
in
have a
fact,
couple.
we need to make a motion on this, Kelly.
Oh, we didn't take a motion, sorry. Can I get a motion?
Yes, I approve, sorry, been a long day. I move that we approve the contract with Varsity Brands.
And a second?
I second.
All right, thank you. Now, any clarifying questions? Julie?
Do we have to, like, for the next 5 years, then, what, we haven't asked it yet. For the next, do we have to buy, like, uniforms through this company?
No, because we will have fulfilled the terms of the contract. Because it's $75,000 total or 5 years. And we've
And how much
already-
would we owe them if we didn't go into contract with them?
Say that again.
How much money would we owe them if we did not sign the contract?
The estimate that I have received is $35,000.
Any other questions from the board before we open up for public comment? Okay, all right, and Janelle? But you have to read those reading. This, I think, is only.
I'm not sure, this still doesn't really make any sense from what I just heard. It sounds like what I wanted to comment on before was right along the lines of what Adam had to say. So I don't see how it's really, why you deferred me to this part, this time to comment. So anyway, I'll start again, because I think it's going to be more like the last topic that I should have said this. But anyway, so I'll start again. How could any of you in your right mind feel good about entering into this outrageously expensive and unnecessary rebranding contract? You just shut down El Molino, eliminated an entire school, and your first thought is to spend an enormous amount of money to rebrand annually. So far, I've heard almost $148,000. And that's just the beginning. This is absolutely ridiculous. You are not representing our community. It is truly time you start listening to us. We, the taxpayers, will be paying for your mistakes. This is not how we want our money spent. This money should be spent on our students, supplying books where there aren't any, adding classes so the current ones aren't overcrowded, hiring a chemistry teacher, implementing a reliable communication system. I heard that's worked on today. That's awesome. Paying for a resource officer and maybe even putting a few locks on classroom doors. My daughter is begging me to put her into independent study, and I'm about 10 minutes away from removing her from the school district entirely. What you've done to this district, Ms. Beal, is reprehensible. You have destroyed our schools, destroyed our school district, and severely damaged our community. This type of so-called leadership is useless and unwanted. Personally, I wish you would do us all a favor and resign immediately.
Okay, personal attacks, can we please just keep it on? Thank you.
That's not an attack, that was a request. This little experiment with our children needs to end now.
And I do apologize, with the first line, I thought it was on contracts, but we didn't make a decision on the last item, so.
I tried to correct you, but you didn't listen. Thanks, have a wonderful night.
Any,
This again. So I have 3 comments. Okay, so this says, Dear West Sonoma County Union High School District Board of Trustees, I am appalled that research was not thoroughly done to investigate varsity.com. Whoever made the final decision did not do their due diligence or practice fiscal responsibility. This expansive renaming process during tough economic times puts teachers' jobs at risk and hurts educational programs for students. The community portion of this process has not been involved, which goes against this board's own governance handbook to decide if there even needs to be a renaming. When this all began, it was stated that due to a lack of funds, consolidation needed to happen. Now the district seems to have an open checkbook to erase Annalee High School. The original survey prepared by Varsity.com left out the choice of no branding, which is in conflict of interest. When the desired response was not chosen, the survey was ignored. Ms. Beal signed the initial contract without board approval on March 30th and hastily removed or covered up artwork and history on campus, even when concerns were made about the legality of doing so. According to Education Code 17604, in the event of malfeasance in office, the school district official invested by the governing board with the power of contract shall be personally liable to the school district employing him or her for any and all monies of the district paid out as a result of the malfeasance. End quote. Business and legal experts have pointed out that currently there is a federal antitrust lawsuit against Varsity.com, with another lawsuit already settled out of court. One person called Varsity headquarters trying to get a copy of the contract, and the person answering the phone asked if this was about another lawsuit. When you read through the lawsuit, it states exactly what is happening at our school. At one point, it even alleges that the person signing the contract gets kickbacks, quotes. Varsity has purchased about 85% of all companies that deal with school merchandise and events. It has been pointed out that they are the highest priced company to deal with and limits the school from shopping elsewhere. One example of overpricing is the cost of banners for Laguna, which have been billed at almost $4,000 for 5 banners. I have personally purchased professionally made banners, and they run about $50 to $75. Ms. Beal keeps saying that banners, etc., are free. Nothing is ever free. So far, bills have been received in the amount of $147,807.36. This does not include all winter, spring sports uniforms, helmet painting, or band uniforms. In addition, contracts have been split for the purpose of preventing competitive bidding, leaving local businesses out of the process. I implored this board to not sign this 5-year contract. Do your homework. These costs are only the beginning of inflated prices, a waste of taxpayer money, and lack of community approval. Thank you, Loretta Castleberry. The second one is from Diana Jensen. Diana says, good evening. My name is Diana Jensen. I want to speak in regards of Varsity Brands. I'm confused as to why you are continuing with the partnership of Varsity Brands. I thought the rebranding process was on hold. I know the board has a history of spending unnecessary money. Is this just another example of that? Why do you even need Varsity Brands? It reads if all that you do is mass production of schools. Their art department, their music department, their motivational department. We already have everything. What we don't have is extra money to fix the school. Stop the process of rebranding. Stop spending unnecessary money. We are Annalie. And then the last one is from Ben Lynch. Since the board does not seem to be moved by the words of the public, perhaps the superintendent's own words regarding the high cost of rebranding annually will get the board's attention and compel them to vote a resounding no on the Varsity Brands contract. The following is a quote from an email that Tony Beal sent to 3 Varsity Brands employees. I was able to access this email through a public records request. Here are Tony's words. And he says this is a quote. What I'm afraid of is starting the rebranding process and the board giving in to the community pressure and financial concerns on how much rebranding costs and then suddenly deciding not to rebrand. Tony knows the rebranding costs far exceed the amount she has shared with the board. These rebranding services are not free and they are not low cost. Tony is afraid the board will learn the true cost of rebranding and cancel her pet project. District funds should be spent on the education of students. The district's money should not be used to line the pockets of executives at Varsity Brands. Please vote no on the Varsity Brands contract.
Is that right? We'll bring it back to the board and students. Any additional discussion? Julie?
I just want to make sure I understand everything clearly. We just got the contract yesterday, so I tried to read through it as thoroughly as I could, but I'm not sure I understand everything completely, so I want to double check. I have these 2 issues separated in my mind of whether to sign the contract or rebrand. And I want to look at it fiscally responsibly. So it's my understanding that if we sign this contract, we will be buying like the yearbooks for the next 5 years. Is that correct?
Correct. You've already approved the contract with Herff Jones.
Okay.
It is a separate contract. Totally separate contract.
Okay, so.
But it counts towards the $75,000 in amount in this contract.
Correct.
But buying those yearbooks counts towards the 75?
It does.
Okay. So if we don't sign the contract, we owe them like around $35,000?
Correct.
And if we do sign the contract, we don't owe them anything. And what exactly do we have to do for the next 5 years?
We don't have to do anything for the next 5 years because we will have fulfilled the terms of the updated contract.
So we don't have to buy anything additionally from them?
No. We have a separate contract for yearbooks. That is a 5-year contract.
That is 5 years, but we don't have to buy anything additionally from them?
We do not, because we have reached the $75,000, which is the additional, the addition in this updated contract.
Any other comments, Jeannie?
So I'm a little, I guess I should say frustrated, because just now I've heard 4 different amounts of money that we've supposedly spent. First it was 130,000, somebody said 148,000, 110, I got an email, somebody said it was 110,000, and then someone else just now said it was 147, I think 768 or something like that. So I'm confused, and I don't know where they're getting this information, and is it just another tactic?
Well, I think we need to, like I said, that's why I requested that come back with the rebranding item, because we need to clarify exactly what has been spent. And also I would like to know, because some of those costs were spent on the uniforms, my understanding is we're still going to use those, no matter what is decided, those uniforms will be used ongoing as practice uniforms. So we needed to spend that expense either way. So it's not, so I just would like that broken down too, because some of the expenses aren't just one time and done if we move back, that we're actually still going to use some of those items. So I agree, Jeannie, we need to clarify that.
I got the impression that people were feeling that that perhaps, I mean, I don't know, the cost of what we spent so far, like on the uniforms and stuff, was too high. But it's kind of like, that's not what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about is signing this contract and what it will cost us if we don't. Is that, am I getting that correctly?
I think we should have not had 2 items that were so close together that were very similar, because I apologize to everyone. I think this has caused utter confusion, and yes.
I also, Kelly, I also wanted to ask about the costs of Laguna. I know someone stated, I think in Loretta's letter, she stated that we've spent $2,900 on banners or something like that, and that's not a part of this contract. I'm so confused, and I don't think that's correct.
The Laguna banners are separate from the Varsity Brands contract. I can tell you, and I know this is probably part of the last item, but I asked Joe Elwood questions about how much the rebranding of uniforms has cost, and he says, our BSN reps have done a good job of working with us to find inexpensive reversible when possible jerseys to get us through this bridge year. The estimate of these bridge uniforms for all teams, including cheer, is somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. I'm working at the gate at Volleyball, so I'm not able to come. So that's what he says the total is for all uniforms for the bridge year, including this spring.
And that is included in this $75,000 in this contract, so that's why we've almost spent that total amount, and those are all uniforms that we'll still use for our practice teams, even if whatever is ultimately decided.
Correct.
So that's,
So between what he's saying, we would spend between 50 and 60,000 for bridge uniforms and the 50,000 that we're spending on the Herb Jones, we've exceeded the 75,000 that we have in the contract for Varsity Brands. Does that make sense?
and then one other question that came out, just, I know this has been a question that has been asked to me, just to clarify. I mean, we're hitting the limit of the 75,000, so we're out of the 5-year agreement, but I know that there was concern from especially the boosters, because oftentimes they use local people to fulfill some of their just, you know, side swag that they put together for their teams. That can still happen. Like that.
Correct, because we've fulfilled the terms of the contract, so.
Okay.
So they can get spirit wear anywhere.
Anywhere.
Thank you. That was the right way to say that. I was looking for that. Yes.
I do have one question about band uniforms. Did we take care of, I mean, did they get a bridge uniform, or what happened with that?
Yeah, the initial conversations, and I think Carmen's in the back. The initial conversations was we were providing, or we had figured out what we were going to do with band through half of the school year, but we haven't had the conversations about what we're going to do for moving into the spring. Correct?
Yes. That's something we still have to
Correct.
work on. Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Students, any? Good. Okay, I'm gonna call the question to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And then student, yes, aye. Thank you. All right.
If you guys can remember to say your aye votes into the microphone for our audience at home, they cannot hear you.
Okay. Aye.
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 We're going on to consideration of approval of comprehensive coordinated early intervening services plan.
All right, so Laura Schmidt is here tonight. She's our Director of Special Education. She's going to talk about the comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. Laura, do you want to?
Brian, can you bring up the second presentation?
We have, I think, Laura, do you want to give a little brief? We can do the PowerPoint. Okay.
Yes, please. So tonight I'm here to ask for plan approval. This is a state plan that's due on September 30th. How am I going to signal the next? There we go. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, as far as special education goes, now all auditing is done remotely based on our statistics. There's student level file reviews, we're doing really well. There's categorical monitoring. And then there's this multi-year piece that looks at equity ratios statistically. If our ratios are worse than most districts, and they're worse than most districts 3 years in a row, then it triggers this thing called significant disproportionality. And that's where we are. Next, please. So last year, we worked on a plan, and now we're in implementation of our statistics showed that we had too many white students going to separate schools, and too many Hispanic students with an intellectual disability designation compared with other schools in the states. And this year, we've added on white students that have an emotional disturbance designation, and that term isn't a particularly kind term. It's for a wide range of students whose mental health stands in the way of their education. It might look like attendance, might look like academics, might look like behavior, but for the most part, it's mental health issues that stand in the way of school. And there's a significant overlap between the students who are identified as having an emotional disturbance designation and also go to separate schools sometimes. Okay. So the piece that you, the board, need to know about this plan is the process emphasizes a broad look at early interventions and supports within general ed to avoid this disproportionality within special education. So although I'm writing the report really coming from the perspective of a person involved with student services for all students. So the rule that goes along with this in parentheses is really not to be taken lightly. The district must spend, and this is federal rule supported by the state, 15% of our special education funds have to be on new initiatives, with the idea, the intent behind the federal and state law is that we can't, if we've had these disproportionate numbers 3 years in a row or more, then we have to do something different. So this is different. I just quickly want to tell you that, next one. We have 2/3 of our school population is white and about 1/4 Hispanic. By chance, same statistics, 2/3 of our special education students are white, 1/4 Hispanic, 2/3 of our special education students with emotional disability or designation are white and 1/4 Hispanic. So our disproportionality is not due to a difference in the qualification rates of white students and Hispanic students. Next. I've highlighted our disproportionality is due to over-identification. We are just qualifying too many students as special education, as having mental health concerns leading to emotional disturbance, and that's for white kids and Hispanic kids. If you look at that ratio, 1.1% of SPED kids statewide have an ED designation, and almost 6% of our students, of our SPED students. Now, our numbers are very, very small, so there's kind of fluctuations year to year. But ultimately, this has happened 3 years in a row at least. So, we went through a series of conversations and research and study, and we used all our empathy interviews, and we used a lot of data and came to the conclusion we have amazing pre-referral interventions now. So our general education population has a pretty extensive array of supports for academics, behavior, social, emotional. Tons of stuff is working. I'm super proud of the teams and the staff. And at the same time, the research says we need it to be robust. And I don't think we can use that robust word yet in the way that we match students to the interventions with some system of accountability. So just because we have therapists, just because we have a behaviorist, doesn't mean we're actually getting students to those services in a way that can be documented and tracked so that we know what we're doing. Next one. And this is our last. So the plan concludes with activities, including we're going to do mental health screening for everyone in the entire district. That is certainly timely. We are going to purchase, so this is the 15% of our budget. We're going to purchase efficiency software, which increases student accountability for getting students to the right interventions. It's a way that teachers, therapists will be able to say, during tutorial, I expect you here, and it prioritizes. I mean, it's beautiful software, and it will tell us if our kids actually make it, as opposed to the current paper pass system that a student gets a pass, and it's a lot of effort, and who knows if they actually make it to a therapist or whoever the intervention is. We're gonna make sure that we establish procedures and processes for the internet intervention tab in ARIES, so that there's sort of long-term documentation. And we want to address academic mediation program with therapeutic supports. So what that means is using ExactPath, which is a component in Edmentum for math and English, and basically having a remediation class in summer school that is available for elective credit. And we'll come back to that piece, but shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, the whole point here is that these activities will actually get our high-need students to interventions in a comprehensive and robust way. Do you have any questions?
Before we go into questions, I do need a motion on this item.
I move that we approve, sorry, I'm losing it. The Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervention Services Plan.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jolie. And any clarifying questions from the board? You can't comment this questions,
Sorry.
and then we'll open it up for public comment, and then we'll come back for, yeah. Question? Do we have any? Do we have any comment? Are you got Jolie? Okay, sorry.
How do you determine whether or not you're over-identifying or just identifying correctly? You know what I mean?
Isn't that the question of the day, right?
I mean, it just seems like
right. The answer
the teachers
is
are really
identify.
good at identifying kids who need help.
Right. And the answer is that the special education system, we clearly are being responsive in a way that other districts throughout the state aren't. So I hear what you're saying. And we can provide those supports before a kid has a breakdown, a label, absenteeism, all Fs, and I feel strongly that that special education, when it comes to mental health in teenagers, is often a last resort. That's a reactive piece, and that this plan is intended to be proactive, and I feel like we're getting there. It's very exciting to me.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? And we don't have any speaker cards on this item, so we will just bring it back to the board. I think, Angie, you had a comment?
I was just going to commend you on the early intervention tools. I think that, you know, heading things off and kind of pointing the students in a direction to get the correct support they need is great. So I commend you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Jeannie?
I just wanted to say thank you, Laura, so much for your hard work on this. And I also want to say that, just kind of want to let the board know how important she is to us and to Tony, because if we didn't have Laura, Tony would be doing all of this work. And I think we all know that that might be impossible. So thank you so much, and I just so appreciate your expertise and your knowledge of this subject and just your overall general loveliness.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And student vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to item 5, which is consideration of approval of update to district COVID safety plan. Can I get a motion for this item?
I would like to move.
There actually aren't any.
Oh, there aren't any updates?
Yeah, so it's on the agenda as an approval of the district COVID plan, but that was in the case that there were updated recommendations from the public health, and there have not been any updated recommendations. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, we voted to keep it in alignment with those.
Correct. And we decided that we wanted to have this on our agenda every month, just in case there were updates to the COVID safety plan, but there haven't been any additional updates to the COVID safety plan from the public health.
Are we taking this as an item, or are we just taking?
Yeah, I think we could do it.
A
I
discussion?
can certainly give you an update on where we
okay.
are.
But
Yeah.
it's not an action.
It's not an action item. Doesn't need to be. So.
All right, go ahead.
And my computer decided to die on me, so I have to do this from memory. So like I said, there haven't been any additional updates from public health. We anticipated that there were going to be when there was a meeting yesterday, I believe, for the CIF met, and we had anticipated that they might issue some new guidance, but there hasn't been any new guidance that has been issued at this point. As of today, we have had 18 positive COVID cases on the school site. 17 of them are from unvaccinated students, 1 from a vaccinated student. All of the exposures from our information have not happened on the school campus. They've happened outside of school campus with siblings or other interactions that have happened outside. We have about 50% of our population that has been vaccinated, and of course the other half have not been vaccinated. We have testing. We are beginning our testing protocol next week. So we will be testing all staff that have not been vaccinated, and we will be doing that weekly. And then any symptomatic students on campus, I believe we should have enough testing that we will be able to offer testing for them as well. That testing will start next week.
And this is a discussion item, so any input from the board members?
I do have one.
Jeannie?
I just have a question. Can you give us the numbers of staff who have and have not had vaccination?
Vaccinated, I think all but, where's
down-
Jenny? 7?
Percentages or whatever.
Between 7 and 11, I just got a few in within the last couple hours.
So between 7 and 11 staff member have not been vaccinated.
Pretty great, thank you.
Yeah, so those staff members will be testing starting next week here at the school site.
Okay, Julie?
Do you have any idea how our vaccination rate compares with other high schools in the area?
I don't.
I'm just curious of how that would compare to the amount of cases that we have compared to other schools.
Yeah, I was going to ask I mean, you kind of answered my question, Tony. I had a similar question along those lines because I've been wondering why we're having a little bit higher of COVID cases than other schools when even though we've merged campuses, our school size is still fairly average and very similar to the other high schools. So I think a lot of some people in the community think that it is the overcrowding that's leading to the increased COVID, but given that we're not that much, we're similar size, what is it that's leading to us having higher case rates? And what you're saying here, it seems like it's because our 50% vaccination rate is most likely contributing to that factor.
Because it's not happening, the exposure's not happening on our campus, the exposure's happening outside of school.
Well, which is good news. It seems like we're able to reduce and mitigate the exposure on campus, so it's not spreading, which is good. I think the other piece too is I think this goes back to some of the earlier conversations we've had in the earlier evening just around communication. And I think some of this information just around, we're testing next week, just getting some of that information out to parents, I think is just, it would be helpful. I know for me, just with my school, I'm going through this exact process where I get the email and like, well, there's an exposure on campus, or there's an exposure in a classroom, and it just leads to a lot of questions around how this is being addressed in the school community. So I just think the more information we might be able to get out to parents. And I know last year around Parent Square, we were doing kind of those weekly updates just around the school mergers. So it might be an opportunity to kind of just give updates around how we're reducing exposure, because I do know that there's a lot of parents that have just anxiety around our case rate numbers and what that means for campus and the potential risk of their kids coming to school and, you know, and being exposed. So, yeah.
Didn't you say, Tony, that Shauna was, or did Shauna say it? I don't know, that she's going to do a newsletter out? So that might be something that we can put in there and communicate.
And I do think it would be nice to give parents information of schools that have a higher vaccination rate, what their COVID numbers are as compared to ours. I think that would be great.
Well, I know San Francisco is the North Star. I think they have 90% vaccination rate in their school district, and they have like 0 COVID cases. So there is a correlation. Yeah.
Wow. San Francisco's the star in the nation.
Yeah, I know. It's all San Francisco. Any other discussion or items from the board, student? Do you have anything to add?
No, just thank you for the update.
We do have a public comment.
And then do we have a public comment?
I have one. I'm going to do this again. Okay, so this letter is from Michelle Ramos, parent of a West County High School student. I'm writing to express opposition to mandatory masking, testing, and vaccinations for schools. Masks are not safe to wear. They are in fact harmful to health, psychologically and physiologically. There are numerous studies documenting the many risks associated with mask wearing. Not only are masks ineffective at preventing viral spread, masks interfere with normal breathing. They are immunosuppressive, they can get contaminated, and they contribute to sickness. COVID vaccines are not traditional vaccines. They are experimental gene therapy, mRNA technology, and they cannot be considered safe and effective because they are new. They have not yet finished their clinical trials, and there is no long-term safety testing or data. COVID vaccines are considered investigational and experimental. Most concerning is that there are thousands of adverse side effects and deaths being reported on vaccination adverse events reporting system from these emergency use authorization COVID vaccines. I researched and verified that vaccine makers are not liable for any side effects, injuries, or deaths resulting from their products. Pharmaceutical companies are immune from liability, which was granted by Congress in 1986 when Congress passed the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. Therefore, vaccine makers have no liability or incentive for product safety and efficacy. States, schools, medical institutions, etc., are being financially incentivized by governmental and pharmaceutical companies to comply with COVID orders in order to receive additional congressional coronavirus funding, COVID relief funds, COVID stimulus funds, etc. It is unethical and illegal to mandate PCR testing and COVID vaccines because neither are FDA approved and both are only available under an emergency use authorization. I urge the school board to not mandate medical decisions for students and staff, including mask wearing, surveillance testing, COVID vaccines, etc. Medical decisions are not one size fits all. Medical decisions should not be mandated. Medical decisions should not be made individually. Medical decisions are protected by the Constitution and the Nuremberg Code.
Okay, I'll bring it, and we don't have any comment cards on this item, right, Karen? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Any additional comments?
I just wanted to say thank you for bringing us the information.
Goldie?
Maybe it would be a good idea to have a parent information night concerning COVID, where they, with a medical professional. So parents could ask questions and maybe become more comfortable with the vaccine.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Yeah. Okay. And we will have this as our standing, can bring it back. Thank you. Now we're moving on to consideration of approval of resolution number 2, September 2021, 2022, declaring September as Attendance Awareness Month.
This is actually a, I'm sorry.
Yeah, motion.
I move that we approve resolution number 2, September 2021, 2022, declaring September as Attendance Awareness Month.
I second.
Thank you. All right, now Tony.
Sorry. This is actually an item that comes back every year. September is usually termed the Attendance Awareness Month, so we will be talking to students and parents about the importance of attendance and how it impacts our funding and studies. So we will be doing that as we do every September.
Excellent. Any clarifying questions from the board? We don't have any public comment on this? Any emails? Right, any comments? Thank you for acknowledging and honoring attendance and how important it is. So I appreciate this always coming forward every year. It's really important. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Now we're moving on to business services. And our first item is consideration of approval of monthly budget update for 21-22. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the monthly budget for 21-22.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. Ann.
There. These come every month, and there's nothing particularly exciting. But as we get new information from the state, or we see, who our actual staff is, or things we need to buy that perhaps we didn't plan on, we adjust our budget. So that's what's in here, the normal reports.
All right, thank you. Any clarifying questions from the board? Student? Oh, and we can't do student vote on business or HR. It's HR items.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And any comments from the public?
Of course not.
We go to vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, consideration of approval of the 2021 unaudited actuals. Can I get a motion for this?
I move that we approve the 2021 unaudited actuals.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Angie.
So you have the complete package in your agenda. This year was a little bit different in that we have a lot of money, both state and federal, related to trying to help schools fight the effects of the pandemic and provide the supports our students need. The accounting for these funds has been very fluid. So there are things that at the time we prepared next year's adopted budget, we thought that money was going to be accounted for in 21-22, and instead we were told to account for it in 2021, and some of the money went the other direction. So if you look at the comparative reports, a lot of things look odd. They just look very inconsistent. But because there is all this one-time money, that's really how it is. The most important thing is to remember it is one time, so these spending levels are not sustainable. The big takeaway is that our undesignated, unrestricted ending fund balance increased $350,133 to a total of $443,742 compared to what was in the estimated actuals at the time we adopted the budget. That extra money will come in very handy as we move forward, because maintaining the higher level of student supports that we want to maintain into 22-23 is going to be a challenge. And so the key is to save this money for that purpose. We've pretty well got enough of this federal and state money to take us through the current fiscal year. And that's why when you look at the reports, you see fairly high ending fund balance. But we will go through that money going into 22-23, because 22-23 is the first year where we will go back to being funded on current enrollment. Right now, we're still being funded on 19-20 ADA. We're still processing our numbers, and I don't think we really have a complete picture of what this year's really going to look like. It is likely that 21, 22 actual will be the basis for next year's funding. And that will be reported on at the first interim report when we get past Census Day and really have a better handle on what our numbers are looking like. But that's the key. So it's good news. You know, we were pretty close on our budget. A budget of our size to only have a swing of $350,000 means we were pretty close. And you normally would expect there to be some savings because we simply don't know, like, how much will the June utility bills be? How much will the final special education non-public schools bills be? So it's in the right direction, but it's not go have a party or go start something new. This is we'll be able to maintain the things we're starting this year to help our students a little bit longer into the future.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the board. Any clarifying questions? Any comments on this one? No? All right. We'll bring it back for any comments beyond questions from the board. Any comments? Angie?
Thank you, Anne, for all your continued hard work.
Thank you.
Yes, ditto. Thank you, Anne.
All right. We will go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Student?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to consideration of approval of resolution number 3, 2021-2022 in the matter of adopting the GAN limit.
So, oh, you need a resolution.
Motion. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve resolution number 3, September 2021-22 in the matter of adopting the GAN limit.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right. Oh, Ann.
So this is another thing that we have to do every year. And to say that it is an obscure provision of state law, I think might be understating the case because it's really hard to explain the GAN limit. It arose as a way of trying to ensure that government spending didn't grow too fast. For school districts, if we exceed our GAN limit, we just ask the state to increase our limit. And that's what we will be doing this year. And frankly, it's the first time I've ever had to do that, but there's a process. The county office has a form for us and we'll send it in and it will be fine. The state itself has a little bit of a concern because last year was a windfall tax year for them. So there was talk in the news over the summer about the state exceeding their GAN limit and what would it mean. But the state in the final budget bill came up with a solution. All the school districts and other entities that aren't over their GAN limit are transferring their excess limit to the state, and now the state will be fine. So that's not a concern. We don't have to worry about any money being taken away.
All right, thank you. And any clarifying questions from the board? Student? And no public comment, so we'll bring it back. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 And
Aye.
student. Thank you. Now, consideration of approval of contract with Total Compensation Systems for the GASB 75 actuarial study. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
So we've worked with TCS for several years now to have our study done. We're required to have the study done. It's a 2-year cycle, so the first year is the big study where they gather all the data, and then the in-between year is what they call a roll forward, where they just take that data and roll it forward. We have to have the study done because we're required to disclose the information in our audit report. Because the whole idea was that public agencies had unrecognized commitments for retiree health, basically. This is really about retiree health. So if we sign our contract now, we get a little bit of a discount, so that's always a nice thing. And we will just be continuing with our same vendor that we've been using, and they know what they're doing. The auditors are happy. The report gives them what they need, the information that they need for the audit.
Thank you. So we'll bring it back to the board for any clarifying questions. And no public. All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Student?
Aye.
All Right now, consideration of approval of district election to participate in the mandate block grant for 21-22. A motion?
I move that we approve the district election to participate in mandate block grant for 21-22.
And a second.
I'll second.
Okay, now,
So this is another routine annual item. You know, years and years ago, the state used to fund individual mandates, and you had to file claims, and then sometime you would get paid, or maybe not. And the state, it was part of what the state called the wall of debt under Jerry Brown. He decided to really do away with funding that stream, and instead now they give us a per ADA amount, basically a per student amount every year. Instead of waiting forever or maybe for never to get those claims paid, we just do the block grant. We know how much we're going to get. It's included in our budget. It's kind of odd because you're required to approve it, but it comes out between a meeting and the next meeting, and the deadline for submitting it was the end of August. So I made sure we applied because I didn't want to not get the money. And that's why this is really coming to you almost after the fact as a ratification.
thank you. Any clarifying questions from the board? And no public comments. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Student?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, now we're moving over to Human Resources and Mia. Our first item is consideration of approval of monthly personnel report. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the monthly personnel report.
All right, thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, so you do have before you the monthly report for September. I do have some additions. One of them is we are hiring Bob Hardcastle as an academic support and independent study teacher. We are also hiring Marcus Ezef as a paraeducator and Angel Ortega as a paraeducator. And Grace Kirk, who is a behavioral assistant with the consortium, is requesting a personal leave of absence for October 4th through the 8th.
Okay, thank you. Any clarifying questions from the board? And no public comment. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And student?
Aye.
Oh, wait, no student. Wait, sorry. HR, sorry. I don't mean to
Yeah,
be
you
awkward.
can't vote
but
for
yes.
HR.
All right. Moving on to the next item, consideration of approval of employment contract for the chief business official. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the employment contract for the chief business official. I'll
And a
second.
Thank you. Mia?
Okay, well, I'm very excited to bring this before the board tonight. So the contract was in a part of your board packet, so I don't know if you have any questions about the contract, but it's a standard contract that we do for all of our administrators.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? And no public comment. Any further discussion? I would just like to say welcome. We're really excited to have you here, and if you want to stand up and say hi,
Yeah, go ahead.
Or why don't we vote first? Why don't we, do you want to vote first?
Yeah,
so
let's
we
vote
Can you vote first, Kelly?
Yeah,
and
all
then
right,
we can
all in
go.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Aye.
All right, well, good evening, President Noe, Superintendent Bill, fellow trustee members. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be joining the West Sonoma County High School District and the community, and really looking forward to this opportunity to serving the students, serving the community in the role as the chief business official. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
I will allow copy for that. All right, now our next item is consideration of approval of 2 new job descriptions for the California School Employee Association. And can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the 2 new job descriptions for CSCA.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, so the district and CSEA entered into an MOU to create both of these job descriptions and to also allow the district to recruit for both of these positions because CSEA did not have the opportunity to vote on the job descriptions before we left for summer break. So since then, the CSEA membership has voted and approved both job descriptions, and now they're coming before the board for the final approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, clarifying questions? And no comments. All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And now consideration of approval revisions to the auxiliary salary schedule. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the revisions to the auxiliary salary schedule.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, so last month I had brought before the board a revision to the auxiliary salary schedule. And Julie, you asked about the long-term sub-pay. So I did a little bit more research, and all of the districts in the county pay between $190 and $200 a day for a long-term sub. But the biggest difference that I found with our district is in the number of days before you start to get that increased pay. So most of the districts start their long-term pay on the 16th consecutive day, and currently our district is paying it on the 21st consecutive day. So what I'm recommending is that we do increase the daily rate for a long-term sub to $200 a day and start that pay on the 16th consecutive day.
Okay, any clarifying questions? Any public comment? Okay, any discussion? Well, I just want to thank Julie for the excellent question last time so that we were able to do that comparison. So thank you for asking that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. And that ends our regular agenda items for this evening. We do have a list of future agenda items. Any items that board members would like us to consider in addition to this list? Good. All right.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Not an agenda item, but I did have someone send to me, you were talking about other high schools and how many COVID cases they had. So at the Windsor board meeting, I think last week, they shared information on how many students had been quarantined due to COVID. And at Windsor High School, we have 481 students who have been quarantined for COVID. At their middle school, 74. At Calamecca, 142. At Brooks, 143. And at Maddie, 0. So they have a total of 842 students who have been in modified quarantine in their district.
So I think that would be helpful information maybe to educate people on, because maybe we're thinking that, not that any cases, I mean, I want to say that delicately. It's all very challenging, but.
Correct. They don't have that information, but I can find out.
For reference, for the middle school, they have about 800 to 900, only because I used to work.
800 to 900 vaccinated?
Students.
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that immediate information and more to come. All right. Well, thank you all and have a good evening, and we will see you next week. All right. Thank you. Bye. We have